I found out I was being replaced while I was still the only person keeping the whole operation from falling apart. It was 6:12 in the morning on a Thursday. I was sitting in my truck on the third level of the DFW airport parking garage, laptop open on the passenger seat, watching a live video feed of Ward Pelton telling Cascade Air Group's leadership team that I was transitioning into an advisory capacity. I was still on the Apex Aviation Services payroll, still the designated representative named in Section 9.4 of the Cascade contract. Still the only person at that company who could walk an FAA auditor through 7 years of Part 145 maintenance records without breaking a sweat. My name is Scott Harlow. I'm 49. I've spent 22 years in aviation maintenance compliance. And I just watched a 31-year-old with a Harvard MBA and 0 hours in a hangar explain to a room full of airline executives why their operation would run better without me. I started at the FAA straight out of college, working as a field engineer out of the Southwest Regional Office, 8 years doing airworthiness inspections, Part 14.5 repair station audits, and ramp surveillance at airports across Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. That work shapes how you think. In aviation, documentation isn't red tape. It's the record that proves a mechanic torqued the right bolt to the right spec before that plane carried 70 people at 30,000 feet. Every sign-off matters. Every discrepancy has to be resolved and traceable. There's no "we'll circle back on that." When I left the FAA in 2003, I joined Apex Aviation Services, a mid-size MRO firm operating out of a facility near Dallas Love Field. Carl Pelton had built the company from the ground up starting in the late 1990s. He was methodical, not flashy. He understood that in the maintenance business, clean paperwork and consistent delivery kept clients longer than any sales pitch. I worked my way up over the years. Junior compliance analyst, then compliance manager, then senior manager overseeing the full regulatory portfolio. By 2015, I was running the Cascade Air Group account. Cascade was a regional carrier operating 14 aircraft out of DFW, mostly turboprops and small regional jets serving secondary markets across the South and Midwest. The maintenance contract was worth $9.2 million annually, roughly 38% of Apex's total revenue. I had personally structured the compliance framework, built the documentation systems, and trained the team that ran it. We never missed a filing deadline, never failed an FAA audit, never had an airworthiness discrepancy sit unresolved past the required window. Roland Vance, Cascade's director of operations, was a direct guy who had spent 2 decades on the ops side of regional aviation. He'd seen vendors come and go. He stayed with Apex because we delivered and he knew who to call when something needed to get sorted. That account took years to build. It wasn't going to last forever on its own, but there was no reason it couldn't run another decade if nothing changed. Then Ward Pelton showed up in February. Carl had 1 son. Ward was 31, had spent 4 years at a consulting firm after getting his MBA, and came into Apex as VP of Operations with a mandate to modernize the company's service delivery model. Carl announced it at an all-hands meeting with the kind of proud energy that tells you this decision was already made and not up for discussion. I met Ward during his first week. He came by my office, looked around at the filing systems, the binders, the wall-mounted compliance calendar, and smiled the way someone smiles when they've already written up their diagnosis before running the tests. "Scott, I've been reviewing our operational structure," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "I see a real opportunity to modernize how we're managing the Cascade account. Automated workflows, cloud-based documentation, AI-assisted compliance tracking. We could cut manual processing time significantly." I asked which specific FAA regulatory frameworks he was thinking about in terms of automated compliance tracking. He talked for about 10 minutes. At no point did he answer the question. I explained that our documentation protocols were built around FAR Part 145 requirements, that Cascade's approved vendor agreement required written notification before any changes to our service delivery methods, and that AI-assisted compliance tracking wasn't a recognized category in any airworthiness directive I'd seen in 22 years. He nodded, typed something on his laptop, and told me he appreciated the context. I could tell I'd been filed under resistant to change before I finished the sentence. That was fine. I'd been filed there before. Over the next 6 weeks, Ward started pushing changes through. He brought in new project management software that looked clean and modern and couldn't generate the maintenance record formats Cascade's auditors required. He introduced revised internal reporting structures that broke the traceability chain on our work orders. He set up a new client communication protocol that routed all outbound updates through his office first. Every time I flagged a problem, he called it legacy friction. Every time I asked how we'd stay compliant with federal documentation standards during the transition, he said the team would iterate towards solutions. Peter Langley, our general counsel, pulled me aside after one of Ward's all-hands updates. Has he actually read the Cascade contract? Peter asked. I didn't have a good answer for that. In April, Ward announced a staff rotation program. He framed it as cross-functional development, breaking down silos, building organizational agility. What it actually meant was that the experienced compliance specialists who had been working the Cascade account for years were being pulled out and rotated into other departments. Their replacements were junior analysts Ward had brought over from his old consulting network. Smart enough people, no aviation background to speak of. Within 2 weeks of the rotations, I was catching errors that should never have made it past a first review. Maintenance discrepancy reports going out without required supervisor sign-off. Work order documentation missing the traceability fields that FAA inspectors look for first. One of the new analysts nearly submitted an unreviewed write-up directly to Cascade's chief pilot because it looked like a routine ops update, and she didn't know the difference. I caught it before it went out. It took me 2 days of documentation and a call with our safety officer to properly record the near miss. When I brought it to Ward, he said it was a learning curve issue and suggested our internal classification procedures were probably more complicated than they needed to be. That was the moment I started keeping a detailed log. Every conversation, every email, every decision that looked questionable. I kept copies of everything in a folder on my personal drive and printed backups at home. 22 years in regulated industries teaches you that when things start sliding, the people who documented everything are the ones still standing when the dust settles. Peter was getting more worried by the week. He had been reviewing the contract modifications Ward was quietly proposing and found several that would require formal amendments with Cascade's written approval before Apex could implement them. Moving certain data processing functions to a third-party cloud platform, for instance, touched the security and access control provisions in the original agreement. Ward had started scoping that work without notifying the client. Peter drafted a memo to Carl laying out the exposure. Carl thanked him for it and said he'd discuss it with Ward. Nothing changed. By May, Cascade was starting to notice. Roland Vance sent a formal written inquiry asking about the staffing changes on their account. He had noticed that the contacts his team had worked with for years were no longer responding, and that new names were showing up on deliverables. He wasn't aggressive about it, but the message was clear. He wanted to know what was going on. I drafted a response that was honest without being inflammatory. I told him we were working through some internal development initiatives and that quality would return to standard. Roland acknowledged it but asked for a call, which we scheduled for the following week. During that call, he brought up 2 specific compliance reports from the past month that had formatting inconsistencies his QA manager had flagged. Nothing that triggered a regulatory issue, but enough to notice. Scott, we've never had to flag your paperwork before, he said. I don't want to make a bigger deal of this than it is, but I need to know these are isolated. I told him they were. I believed it when I said it. I was still trying to fix things from the inside. The direct confrontation I had been avoiding came in early June. Ward called me into his office and told me he was restructuring client communications. Starting immediately, all major client-facing interactions would be routed through his office. I would move into what he called a strategic oversight function, focused on high-level guidance while his team handled day-to-day operations. I asked him directly whether he had read Section 9.4 of the Cascade contract. He said contract language was Peter's domain and that operational structure decisions were his. I told him Section 9.4 named me specifically as the designated representative and gave Cascade the right to terminate with 30 days' notice if that changed without their approval. This wasn't a technicality. It was a kill switch, and it was sitting right there on page 14. Ward leaned back and said that contract constraints were negotiable and that clients adapted when they saw better results. I left his office and went straight to Peter's. Peter had already pulled the clause. He looked tired. I've told Carl twice, he said. He keeps saying Ward will find a way to manage it. That afternoon, I made a decision I had been thinking about for several weeks. I pulled up the FAA Safety Assurance System voluntary disclosure portal and spent 2 hours compiling a complete compliance documentation package. Every gap in our maintenance records over the past 4 months, every process deviation from Part 145 standards, every instance where required sign-offs were missing or where traceability had been broken. I attached the internal near-miss report from April. I submitted it to the FAA Southwest Regional Flight Standards District Office. This was not a dramatic move. It was not revenge. Under FAA regulations, certificate holders and their employees have a responsibility to report known compliance deficiencies through the voluntary disclosure program. The program exists specifically because the agency wants problems surfaced before they become accidents. I had filed similar reports twice during my time as an FAA field engineer. It was the right thing to do, and it was exactly what the regulations required. I didn't tell Ward, I didn't tell Carl, I didn't tell Peter. I filed it, closed the portal, and drove home. The quarterly business review with Cascade was scheduled for 6 weeks out. Ward had already taken over the meeting planning, moved it to a conference room I'd never used for client calls, and sent a revised agenda listing himself as the primary presenter. My name appeared at the bottom under strategic input as needed. I spent the following weeks doing my job, cleaning up what I could on the compliance side, responding to Cascade's routine requests, training one of the junior analysts on the correct documentation format for maintenance write-ups. I did not tell anyone what I had submitted to the FAA. I did not mention it to Roland. I just kept working and waited to see how the next 6 weeks would play out. They played out about the way I expected. The Thursday of the quarterly review, I was up before 5. I drove to DFW, parked on the 3rd level of the main garage, and opened my laptop on the passenger seat. I had a printed letter folded in the center console. I had written it the night before, signed it, and left it there. Ward's presentation was scheduled for 8 a.m. I joined the video feed as a silent observer using a guest link one of my former team members had sent me. I wasn't on the agenda. Ward didn't know I was watching. The conference room looked good. Ward had set up a proper display, had his slides ready, had 2 of his junior analysts sitting along the wall. Roland Vance was on screen from Cascade's operations center with 3 of his senior staff behind him. Ward opened with a summary of what he called Apex's transformation journey over the past several months. New platform infrastructure, streamlined workflows, a modernized service delivery model built for scale. The slides were clean, the language was confident. If you didn't know what you were looking at, it sounded impressive. Roland let him finish before he said anything. Then he asked about the 2 compliance reports his QA manager had flagged in May. Ward said those had been transitional artifacts from the platform migration, and that the new system had resolved the underlying issues. Roland asked about the staff changes on the account. Ward said the rotation program was designed to build organizational depth and that Cascade would benefit from having a broader team familiar with their operation. Roland asked about the monthly maintenance summary that had come in 4 days late in June. Ward said legacy system dependencies had caused the delay and that the new infrastructure eliminated that risk going forward. Each answer was smooth. Each answer avoided the actual question underneath it. Then Roland leaned forward and looked directly into the camera. Where is Scott Harlow? He has been our compliance lead for 7 years. Every audit, every FAA filing, every time something needed to get handled, Scott was the one who handled it. I don't see him on this call and his name isn't on this agenda. Ward didn't pause. Scott has transitioned into a strategic advisory role as we evolve our operational model. Our team now brings fresh capability and modern methodology that will significantly enhance the Cascade experience going forward. Roland looked at his notes. Strategic advisory role. Scott is named in Section 9.4 of our contract as the designated representative. That's not an informal arrangement. That's a contractual requirement. Are you telling me that has changed? Ward said the team was committed to ensuring continuity and that the transition was being managed carefully to protect service quality. Roland sat back. That was when I opened my laptop camera, joined the call with video on, and held up the letter so it was visible on screen. The room went quiet. I looked at the camera and kept my voice flat. I want to make sure everyone on this call has the same information. Effective right now, I have resigned from Apex Aviation Services. Ward, the modernized service delivery model is yours to run. Nobody spoke for a few seconds. Roland looked at the letter. He looked at Ward. He looked back at me. Scott, are you serious about this? Completely, Roland? He nodded once. We'll be in touch through our legal team. He reached forward and ended the call from his side. I closed the laptop and sat in the truck for a few minutes. The garage was quiet. A few cars pulled in and out on the level below. I put the printed letter back in the center console and drove home. The calls started before I got out of the airport loop road. Carl's number came up first, then Peter, then a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be Ward calling from his cell. I let all of them go to voicemail and turned the radio on. Peter left a message at 11:40 in the morning. His voice was careful, the way lawyers get when they're documenting everything in real time. Scott, Cascade's legal team, just contacted us. They're invoking Section 9.4. I need you to call me when you can. I didn't call him back that afternoon. I already knew what the clause said. I had made sure it was written into the original contract 7 years ago specifically because I understood what it was for. At 3:15 p.m., Cascade's formal termination notice arrived at Apex's registered legal address. It was one paragraph. Contract reference number termination basis, 30-day notice period, confidentiality obligations, continuing per existing terms, no negotiation offer. No request for a transition meeting. Just a clean, legally precise end to a $9 and $2 million annual contract. Carl called me again at 4. I let it go to voicemail. His message was shorter than Peter's. He said he thought we should talk before I made any permanent decisions. I appreciated that he still thought there were decisions left to make. What Carl didn't know yet, and what Ward definitely didn't know, was that roughly 5 weeks earlier, the FAA Southwest Regional FSDO had sent Apex Aviation Services a formal letter acknowledging receipt of a voluntary safety disclosure and notifying the company that a routine compliance review of their Part 145 repair station certificate was being scheduled. That letter had gone to the company's registered compliance contact, which was still me at the time. I had forwarded it to Peter the same day I received it and noted it in my compliance log. Peter had flagged it to Carl. Carl had asked Ward about it. Ward had said he would handle it. The FAA review was now scheduled to begin in 3 weeks. The designated representative named in Apex's Part 145 certificate as the primary regulatory contact had just resigned. The documentation systems that an FAA inspector would need to review had been migrated to a new platform that couldn't produce records in the required format. The compliance staff who understood the filing history had been rotated out months ago. Ward was going to walk into that review alone. The FAA review ran for about 11 weeks. I know because Peter kept me loosely updated through a mutual contact after he left the company. The inspector assigned to the review asked for 6 categories of records in the opening request. Ward's team could produce partial documentation for 4 of them. The other 2 required the metadata from the old system that the new platform had stripped during migration. Apex received a corrective action notice covering 7 findings. 3 of them were classified as systemic deficiencies, which meant they required a formal corrective action plan and follow-up verification audit before the repair station certificate could be renewed without conditions. That process took the better part of 6 months. Cascade had already been gone for weeks by the time the first inspector showed up at Apex's facility. Roland's team had moved fast. They put out a quiet RFP to 3 vendors they had pre-screened through industry contacts, and Reliant Aviation Partners was on that list. I had joined Reliant about 2 weeks after leaving Apex. The offer came in faster than I expected, but the MRO world is not large and word travels in specific ways. A senior compliance manager with a 7-year clean record on a major regional carrier account doesn't stay unattached for long when the industry already knows why he left. Reliant's ownership had been trying to break into the Cascade account for 3 years. They knew the contract value, they understood the compliance requirements, and they had the facility capacity to handle it. What they had been missing was someone with the regulatory background and the existing relationship to make Cascade comfortable enough to move. I spent my first 6 weeks at Reliant building the proposal, not just the pricing and the scope of services, but the full compliance infrastructure documentation that Cascade's legal and ops teams would need to review before they signed anything. Part 145 certificate, repair station manual, personnel qualifications, documentation protocols, audit history. Everything clean, everything traceable, everything in the format Roland's QA manager would recognize from the previous 7 years. We submitted the proposal on a Wednesday. Roland called me directly the following Tuesday. "Scott, I'm going to be straightforward with you," he said. "We had 3 competitive bids. Yours was not the lowest number, but your compliance documentation package was the only one that walked us through every regulatory requirement without us having to ask a follow-up question. Our legal team had nothing to flag. We got the contract. $10 million and annually, $146 million more than Cascade had been paying Apex. Roland mentioned during the signing call that Cascade had just executed leases on 3 additional aircraft and that they needed a compliance partner who could handle the onboarding documentation for the expanded fleet without any ramp-up time. I told him we could have the airworthiness review files started within the week. That was the part Ward had never understood. The $9.2 million contract wasn't just a revenue number. It was 7 years of institutional knowledge about exactly how that client operated, what their auditors looked for, how their maintenance crews filed discrepancy reports, and what Roland Vance needed to see before he would sign off on anything. You don't replace that with a platform migration and a team of junior analysts who had never read an airworthiness directive. The industry reaction took a few months to fully develop, but it developed the way these things do in a niche sector. 2 of Apex's smaller clients requested compliance reviews after the FAA corrective action notice became part of the public record. Both of them terminated within 60 days. Apex's annual revenue dropped from $24 million to somewhere around $14.5 million inside of a single quarter. Ward was let go about 8 weeks after the FAA corrective action notice arrived. Carl had no choice at that point. The board had seen enough, and two of the company's remaining major clients had specifically asked whether Ward was still in an operational role before they would discuss contract renewals. Carl announced it internally as a mutual transition. Ward's LinkedIn profile went quiet shortly after. Peter left 4 months after I did. His farewell note to the staff was short. He said he had been in the compliance and legal field long enough to know that when an organization stops treating regulatory requirements as the foundation of its operations, the outcomes become predictable. He thanked the people he had worked with and wished them well. Carl called me in December. It was a Thursday evening, about 10 months after I had driven out of that parking garage. He was polite about it. He said several prospective clients had asked specifically whether I would be involved in any new engagements, and he wanted to know if I would consider coming back in a consulting capacity to help stabilize the remaining client relationships. I thanked him for calling. I told him I was under an exclusivity arrangement with Reliant that covered the MRO sector in the Southwest region, which was true. I wished him well with the business. The resignation letter is still in the center console of my truck. I don't take it out, it's just there. Some mornings when I'm in the Reliant parking lot going through the day's compliance checklist before I go in, I think about that Thursday morning in the DFW garage, not with any particular feeling about it. It just happened the way it happened. Roland called on a Tuesday. We got the contract. I was back at my desk by Wednesday morning. If you have spent years building something that actually works, and someone with a new title and a fresh set of buzzwords starts telling you that your experience is the problem, pay attention to that. Not because you need to fight it, you probably don't. The work you've done tends to speak clearly enough on its own when the right moment comes. The only question is whether you're still standing there when it does, or whether you already walked out the door and let the consequences run their course without you. Most of the time, walking out is the move.